Well, we were all wrong. There were two males in the house that night. Around 1:32 a.m., they pulled up and the girl walks outside and says, "Blank, what are you doing here? I see you, blank." And this video is for education and entertainment purposes only. When they realized Kaylee and Maddie were still at the corner club, they went to the corner club and then they followed them home. They get out of the car and slam the door, and you hear them, they stop Murphy, and you hear him say, "Blank, don't go too crazy in there." They enter the house. You hear him say, "Get that bitch into Xana's room." They did tie them up and they bound them together and they gagged them, Kaylee and Maddie. He proceeds to start yelling at her, asking if she had been double dipping. She said no. She said, "Please stop," basically. This is all around 3:45 now, or at least that's what the timestamps say. He proceeds to Kaylee, and you hear gurgling and aspirating. Maddie screams, "Kaylee, no." He says, "Stop." She says, "Kaylee," again. He says, "She's gone." As soon as he says she's gone, the other unidentified male, number 2, says, "Come on, let's get ready to go to the house and clean up." They found blood in the other cabin, remember? As soon as they go to exit around 3:48, almost to 3:49 a.m., at the very end of 3:48, so 3:48 and 50 seconds around then, he says, "Come on, let's get ready to go home and clean up." They go to walk out and Ethan walks in. Ethan gasps and says, "Oh shit, I'm calling 911. Then you hear the first male say, "Come here." He starts chasing Ethan. They get in a scuffle. It was the two men against Ethan. You hear Ethan yell for Xana. And then Xana comes down. And that's when the fight started with her, which is why she had so many defense wounds. Because she was awake and she was trying to help Ethan. Which is why Dylan never called 911, because she literally watched them unalive Ethan for saying he was going to call 911. Then one of the males speaks to one of the females, that must have been Dylan, and said, "Just tell them it was an accident." That's why Dylan didn't call 911. That's also why Dylan was so uncontrollably emotional at the sentencing, because she knew that Koberger was being put away for a life sentence and that the real people that did it would never go to prison because they caught the unaliver. Which is why in that Facebook post she says, "I don't know who called 911. It wasn't me," because she didn't want them to come back and finish her off for calling 911. The dogs did know the two unalivers. And then it seems like at some point when another car pulls up, he says, "Just get Murphy and make sure he's safe." So they literally took the dog and wanted the dog to be safe while they were committing this heinous fucking crime. It all makes perfect sense now. The two unidentified male blood that they found at the crime scene, that's who the real culprits were. That's why it was their blood left at the scene, which is what always got me, because touch DNA can be transferred from object to object or person to person. So you could easily plant a knife sheath with someone else's DNA on it easily. What they didn't produce was a murder weapon, and typically DNA like blood would override something like touch DNA. So that means the people that did this have a lot of money. They're very prominent in that town. And if you follow the money trail to, I don't know, the officers and the judges and everyone they paid off, I bet you'd find out who the real killer is. When Dylan says in her interrogation, "I don't know if he knew me and that's why he spared me," they did know her. She was actually very close with male number 2. Very close. As in, like, maybe they dated. Because they say the names multiple times. I'm not going to say them on here because I'm low-key scared that they'll come get me next. But that's what happened. There were at least 2 males inside of that house. They did restrain Murphy. That's why Murphy had nothing on him. No blood, no anything on him. That's why Dylan didn't call 911. That's why she was so scared in her interviews and didn't remember anything, because she knew that the unalivers were going to be contacting her and asking her, what did she say to police? And she probably knew that they could have access to the interrogations if they could pay off the police. That's why she wanted to start a GoFundMe, because she knew if something ever happened with this case and that family came for her, if they could bury Koberger in 4 life sentences, what could they do to her? I believe the only reason that Dylan was spared is because she was close to unidentified male number 2. I believe that Bethany was at the other house with the people that unalived the 2 girls. And that's why she kept texting her, just come down here. She wanted Dylan to leave the house and come down there with them. But would you want to leave the house and go to the house where the unalivers were? Doubtful. Even if it was your man, even if it was your friend. That's why she was texting. I don't know about anything else, but I'm going to try to go through some more of the audio footage, but I could hear it clear as day last night, and I posted it with the caption so you guys could hear what I heard. He was accusing her of cheating. He said something, there will be no more of your lies. And that's when Kaylee started, or when Maddie started screaming for Kaylee. And he said, stop, she's gone. So he obviously knew that she was not alive then. And then you hear gurgling and aspirating, so it was either one of the girls. But I just want to know how you could live with that, because I've been up close to someone before they pass away and get that death gurgle. And I hope that it replays in their mind all day, every day. I hope it drives them insane. I hope if they see this TikTok that I hope they know that karma's coming someday for them. And I pray that the truth comes out, because it seems to me now that Brian Kohberger was framed 100%. That's why when he got pulled over for doing 41 and a 35 and he asked the cop for what he got pulled over for, he said he was speeding. Then the cop asked him, was he wearing a seatbelt? And Brian says, no. And the cop says, oh, well, that's no good. And he said, at least I was honest with you, right? He was using reverse psychology to try to make the officer feel bad because he knew that they were plotting something on him. That's why when he got pulled over the one time, like 15 minutes apart, I believe the second time he got pulled over, he did it on purpose to prove that they had been following him. I guarantee you the stalker they said Kaylee had was the unaliver. It wasn't Brian Kohberger. And if you lived right down the street from Kaylee, then that would be a good way to monitor her. But I do believe that Dylan invited her back, and that the person she was with coerced her to tell Kaylee to come back for that weekend. And I just think that she didn't know they were going to do all that. Am I giving her a free pass? No, but I can understand now kind of why she was so scared to call 911. Because obviously if she was the only one left alive in the house and the cops showed up in the middle of the night and nobody else was around, they would know that she was the one that called. And they would have made her pay for that. And then really where it goes from there is untelling, because you hear the cop saying that he was homeboys with Hunter J. So who was Hunter J close to? Oh, what a tangled web we weave when first we practice to deceive. I say it all the time, you guys. That's why when Brian Kohberger got arrested, he said, did you get the other guys? Because at very least, maybe he was like a watchman or something, but them boys know what they did. And they're probably watching this TikTok right now with their rich little family who just paid to make all of this go away. That's why they wanted the trial to not happen, because if that unidentified male blood would have ever been brought up, or the unidentified male DNA that was found underneath Maddie's fingernails that didn't match Kohberger, they would have known right away that he never did any of this. That's why he was so calm in court, because he knew he didn't do anything. Or he didn't do what they said he did. And I'm not saying he was completely absolved of guilt, but I guarantee you if I could find a couple of voice clips of those friends, I could match it up 1,000%. This is how corrupt judicial systems can get if one person is in power in town and has a lot of connections. And that's what happened here. The unaliver was from a very Idaho prominent family. And they had done a lot for Idaho in general. Money can make people shut up, and I bet you if you followed the money trail, you would see which family was responsible for this cover-up.